So we're back with the second section of Bronx Masquerade. So your page numbers might be a little bit different than mine, but I'm starting from Tyrone's second part, which should be page 6, where it starts with "School ain't nothing but a joke." So, uh, do you remember our first character so far? So we've had 2 characters that were introduced. We've had Wesley and Tyrone. So I want you to write down one thing that you know about Wesley and one thing that you know about Tyrone in the next question box. Okay, so I hope you remembered that Wesley went by Bad Boy, okay, and that he's the one who makes Tyrone come to school, okay, and then Tyrone's the one who doesn't want to come to school because he thinks he's going to die. But also, you might have remembered that Tyrone wants to be a hip hop star. Okay. And in fact, we have actually a third character who I didn't even mention, Mr. Ward, who to me seems like a pretty cool teacher because he lets his kids read poetry in class. And we did, of course, learn about Langston Hughes. But let's go ahead and get started with our next chapter. So, we're starting with Tyrone's biddings. School ain't nothing but a joke. My moms don't want to hear that, but if it weren't for Wesley and my other homies, I wouldn't even be here. These white folk talking about some future, telling me that I got to be planning for some future, like I got one. And Renard agreeing like he's smart enough to know. From what I hear, that boy can't hardly read. Anyway, it's all them white folks that get me with this future mess, like Steve all hopped up about working on Broadway and telling me that I should think about getting with it too. Asked me if I ever thought about writing plays. Fool, what kind of question is that? I said. He threw his hands up and backed off a few steps. All I'm saying is, you're a walking drama, man. You got that down pat, so maybe you should think about putting it on paper. When that boy dyed his hair, I believe some of the bleach must have seeped right into his brain. I grind my teeth and lower my voice. Boy, get out of my face, I tell him. He finally gets the message and splits. I'm ticked off that he even got me thinking about such nonsense as Broadway. Okay, so first off, I want to start out with this phrase: school ain't nothing but a joke. Do you remember what kind of figurative language that is? School ain't nothing but a joke. I'm going to give you some choices, and you can choose which kind of figurative language this is. Another thing that I wanted to talk about is looking here. We learned something about Renard. We learned that Tyrone thinks that Renard can't barely read, right? So now we have Renard, who Tyrone thinks can't read. And then we also have Steve, who's excited about Broadway. So we're getting introduced to more characters in the story, right? And one of the things we know about Steve is that he dyed his hair, right? So that tells us something about his character, that he cares about how he looks. He dyes his hair. We don't know what color. So it might be some bright, crazy color. I'm thinking maybe because he wants to be on Broadway, he would do bright, crazy colors, right? So interesting. We also know that Tyrone keeps talking about these white folks talking about some future. So that pretty much tells me that I think Tyrone must be African American, right? He must be black because he's talking about white folks. What else? I also noticed a certain kind of language use here. Words like homies, ain't nothing but a joke. Okay? These are definitely informal ways of talking. That's not the way that you would talk correctly in school, but we're really getting a feel for Tyrone's voice and how he thinks. Okay? Let's continue. White folk. Who they think they kiddin'. They might as well go blow smoke up somebody else's you know what, 'cause black man's got no chance in this country. I'd be lucky if I make it to 22 with all these fools running around with AK-47s. Here, I'm one of the few kids whose daddy didn't skip out on him, and he didn't even make it to 30. He was doing okay until he got blown away on a Saturday. Blam. Another statistic in a long line of drive-bys. Life is cold. Future? What I get is right now, right here, spending time with my homies. Wish there was some future to talk about. I could use me some future. So I think we just learned something important about Tyrone. What event made Tyrone feel like he didn't have a future? Okay, I hope you all just answered, and I hope you identified that it was the fact that his father got killed, right? I'm trying to highlight here. That he got blown away on a Saturday, just another statistic in a long line of drive-bys. So the fact that his father got filled before he was even 30, that has really affected Tyrone and given Tyrone a real negative outlook on life, right? So that's sad. But let's continue. Let's learn a little bit more about Tyrone. I'm excited to get to his poem. I'm just about to sleep off the whole year when this teacher starts talking about poetry and he rattles off a poem by some white guy named Dylan Thomas that sounds an awful lot like rap. Now I know me some rap, and I start thinking I should show Mr. Ward what rap is all about. So I tell him I got a poem I'd like to read. Bring it on Friday, he said. As a matter of fact, from now on, I'll leave time for Friday readings at the end of every month. We'll call them open mic Fridays. The next thing I know, I'm digging some old rap poems out of my dresser drawer and bringing them to school. I'm thinking it can't hurt to share them, even if there's no chance I'm ever going to be a songwriter. After all, it's one thing I could see myself doing if there really was a future. And I'm thinking that maybe there could be if I wanted it bad enough. And all of a sudden, I realize I do. So something kind of dramatic has happened, and it happens really early on in the book. We know that Tyrone in the past has not even thought about his future. And in the end of this chapter, he's already saying that all of a sudden he really wants a future, right? So, who inspired Tyrone to decide to bring out his poetry to share with Mr. Ward? If you answered Dylan Thomas, you were right. It was Dylan Thomas. So it was a poem that they read by Dylan Thomas. I suppose indirectly it was Mr. Ward, because Mr. Ward's the one who read the Dylan Thomas to him, right? But that really inspired him to share his raps with Mr. Ward on Open Mic Fridays. And now we get to Tyrone's poem. Attendance by Tyrone Biddings. We are all here, Leslie, Bad Boy, Lupe, and Raoul. Here and here and here. Dear Mr. Ward with his Ward and Wardsettes, let's have a show of hands today. Is Portia here? Is Deandra here? Where, oh, where is Sheila? It's me, Tyrone, up here all alone, rapping into a microphone, 'cause I got something to say. MTV is here, and Mir, and morning spacewalks are here. Terrorism is here, lurking at the bus stop. Can't hop on a subway without thinking of Tokyo. We all know poison gas does not discriminate. It's too late to worry about my innocence since fear is here. Why is a weekend visit to your local Mickey D's maybe deadly? Why hasn't someone censored death? Don't hold your breath waiting. Still, you can chill and celebrate all that's great about life, like music and the tick, 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 tick of time, which is equal parts yours and mine, to make the world what we will. But first, say no to coke and smoke. Say no to police brutality and causing fatality. Say no to race hate. Don't underestimate the power of love. But most of all, take 2 poems and call me in the morning. And Tyrone did not disappoint. He says he's a rapper, and I can see it because his rhymes are really tight, right? First of all, you'll notice that he starts out with calling out to the audience, a common rap thing, right? So he calls out to his friends, Leslie, Bad Boy, Lupe, Roll, okay, and to Mr. Ward and his wards and wardettes. So this is a play on words. So the definition of a ward, do you guys know what a ward is? I'm going to give you a chance to give the definition. So a ward is traditionally someone that you are responsible for. It's like a child that you've adopted. So it's not quite the straight definition of his words and wordettes, but he's talking about his students, right? And wordettes is not a word. It's a word that Tyrone totally made up just to mean his male and his female students. Okay. And he keeps asking questions. You know what it is do you know what it's called when you ask a question and you don't expect an answer to it? Oh, hopefully a bunch of you got that right. Yeah, that's a rhetorical question, a question you don't expect an answer to. Okay. And then he comes in and says he's up there rapping into the microphone because he's got something to say. And he makes some references to MTV and Mir and spacewalks and terrorism. And these are all current events that are happening during the time when this book was written. So Mir is the space station. MTV was a channel that had videos, music videos. I don't know if they do anymore. And there were gas bombs in Tokyo, so that's why he's talking about that. But then he adds another reference in here, and these are all like big news stories. But the visit to your local Mickey D's. What event is he referring to with that? Yeah, if you put that he's referring to his father getting shot on the weekend, I'm pretty sure that's what it is. So up here we see that he says that he got blown away on a Saturday, just another statistic in a long line of drive-bys. He doesn't specifically say that he's at Mickey D's, but this reference to saying that a weekend visit makes me think that that might be where the drive-by happened, that his dad was killed. I don't know, but I think this might be an implied fact that he's giving us. Okay? And he's angry about this death. He asks us, why hasn't someone censored death? He's not expecting an answer. He's just expressing his anger. And then he talks about the things that you can celebrate, like music. And that's awesome, right? Celebrating music. And then he does this tick, tick of time. So if you remember from yesterday, when we have multiple words in a row that have the same first letter, what is that called? Multiple words in a row, like the tick, tick, tick of time. What's that called? If you chose alliteration, you're right. Alliteration is when you repeat the same first sounds, like Betty bought a pound of butter, but the butter was bitter, so Betty bought a better pound of butter to make the bitter butter better, but the bitter butter made the better butter bitter. So I'm sure you all know some examples of alliteration too, because most people know some tongue twisters, right? So this is alliteration. This is also something else. This is also called an onomatopoeia. That starts with an O, an onomatopoeia. And an onomatopoeia, does anyone know? I'll give you a chance. An onomatopoeia is when you make a word that sounds like a sound. So tick, tick, tick sounds like the sound of a clock ticking. So that's what an onomatopoeia is. Okay. Equal parts yours and mine to make the world what we will. But first, say no to Coke and smoke, right? And he's got this say no to all these things. Notice that hate and underestimate rhyme. Rhyme is a big thing that people use in poetry. It's not the only thing that makes it poetry. There's lots of parts here that don't rhyme, but man, does it make this part sound good when he gets to these short little parts. But most of all, take 2 poems and call me in the morning. So he's doing something just like Bad Boy did, right? He is taking a common idiom or cliche that people use. You know, the doctor tells you to take 2 whatever and call them in the morning, right? And he turns it around and says, take 2 poems and call me in the morning, implying, right, that the poems can cure you. That poems are medicine. Love that implication. So this is an implied metaphor, okay? Really cool. Okay, now we're going to get another character, Chinkara Troop. Every time we've got the words up here, we've got a new character. Okay, now Chinkara is speaking. So I like the way this is going to different characters' points of view, right? First we had Tyrone's point of view, or no, first we had Wesley's point of view, then we had Tyrone's point of view. Now we have Chinkara's point of view. I'm not in the mood for Tyrone's sorry, baby, give me some lovin' routine. So when I see him in the hall, I storm past as if he's not even there. Eventually he'll figure out why. I come to school sporting shades and a Johnny print across my left cheek. Johnny being the name of the idiot who smacked me last night. Naturally, Portia's the first person to notice my new tattoo. She walks straight up to me and says, "You deserve better, girlfriend, and you know it. No hello, no how are you, just you deserve better." Then she turns and walks away into the classroom. Typical Portia. No nonsense. That's why we get along. Okay, so I'm going to stop here, talk a little bit. First of all, I hope you notice how different Shankara talks than um, Tyrone and Wesley, right? She's much more proper. She speaks much more proper English. She doesn't have blends. She just says it like it is and is much more proper about how she says things. Okay? Um and also, how does she feel about Tyrone? Well, she used a great word to share her reaction to him, where she says she storms past. The author could have easily said work past, but saying storms past is so much stronger, right? That shows that she's annoyed with him, right? And then we get a new character. We have Portia. What's one thing that you know about Portia? Okay, I hope you said that she's no nonsense or that she tells it like it is, right? That is definitely something we learn from Portia, because Portia walks right up to her and talks about how she shouldn't have a boy who hits her and she should get rid of that boyfriend. Okay, now let's continue. Then here comes Sheila Gambaroni. The minute she sees me, she demands to know the name of the guy who gave me my shiner, like she's going to send her brothers after him or something. I keep his name to myself just in case. She commences to call the guy everything but a child of God, which makes her feel better, I think. Then gives me a hug and says she'll see me later. Sheila is a bit over the top with the sister act, as if she's trying to make up for being white, but she means well. I can do with some of the other girls who stare at me, though. I can do without. Oh, that makes more sense. I can do without some of the other girls who stare at me, though. I know they're just looking for something to talk about, so I rip off my sunglasses and let them get a better look. Might as well stare all you want. This is the first and last time you will see me like that. Of course, they all say. That's what they all say. Nobody knows better than me. My sister's boyfriends have been beating her up for years. I made up my mind a long time ago. I'm not having none of that. Oh, now she's using a double negative. Notice she says, not having none of that. That's not really considered proper English, but I think it's because she got angry. She slipped into not having none of that, right? Um, so we've got, a new character here. We've got Sheila. What's one thing that you know about Sheila? Okay, so you might have said that Sheila is white, right? Because she points it out, but she tries to act like a sister, right? So Sheila's white, but at least in Jankara's opinion, she's trying to act like she's black or like she fits in, right? She also seems to have lots of brothers, because she says she's going to send her brothers after me. So I'm guessing Sheila has a big family, right? Um, and I also learned something about Chinkara, because she's pretty brave if she's just like, I'm going to take off my glasses and let him stare. And she seems to be quite a determined lady. Okay, so let's continue. And I see right here it says last night, so we're going to flash back. Last night, I tried telling this to Johnny, who seemed to be hard of hearing. He brought me home from a movie. He came in for a while and got comfortable since Mom was working overtime, and we had the apartment to ourselves. We locked lips for a few minutes. The next thing I know, he's fingering my shirt buttons. I push him away, gently at first. I think we better slow down, I say. No, his voice all husky. It's just getting good. This time his hand shoots up my skirt. Bad move. I jump off the sofa like it's on fire. Maybe it's time for you to go. He grabbed my skirt, trying to pull me back down, which is right about when I hauled off and smacked him. He leapt up and smacked me back. My jaw dropped from shock. I looked in his eyes and saw my sister's reflection. I turned away, strode for the door, and held it open for him. Okay, so now we get the story of what happened. This part's a little racy, you know. He's putting the moves on her. Okay. Um, I also noticed that, you know, um, she is very determined and knows what she wants, right? She tells him no. When he doesn't take no for an answer and he hits her, she kicks him out. So that's pretty big. I'm not going to talk about figurative language or anything here because I want to finish this story and see what ends up happening with him. So we're on I turned away. I turned away, strode to the door, and unlocked it and held it open for him. I hope you enjoyed yourself, I said, because that's the last time you'll ever lay a hand on me. Now get out. He actually looked like he was studying on staying, so I stepped out in the hallway and screamed at my top of my lungs. I said get out. Fearing trouble, he left. Now I've got this ugly tattoo on my cheek. I thought about skipping school today, but I hate to miss English. Besides, the bruise is temporary and so is the pain. Still, I'd rather not have kids gawking at me all period. So I park myself in the back of the room and wait for Mr. Ward to call our English class to attention. Mr. Ward is funny sometimes. Sometimes he asks us a question with no warning and tells us to answer quick without thinking about it. The truth is always on the top of your tongue, he says. It's fabrications that take a long time. He asked us, what do you know? Yesterday, I'd say my name. I said my name, but today would be different. I'd tell him, a woman ain't no punching bag. That's what I know. Oh, again, she's doing the ain't no. When she gets angry, she always goes back to doing contractions. So, I've got this ugly tattoo on my cheek. What is she talking about when she says she's got a tattoo on her cheek? If you said her bruise, you were correct. So she's making a comparison between the bruise and the tattoo, right? What's it called when you make a comparison between two unlike things, like a bruise and a tattoo? Oh, if you said metaphor, excellent. That is right. Okay. That's very cool. Okay. So that's definitely some great figurative language here and also some really strong verbs, right? The kids aren't just looking at her, they're gawking at her, right? She doesn't just sit in the back of the room, she parks herself in the back of the room. I got to admire the way this lady uses language, right? She's really good at conveying how people are feeling. Okay, now I want to read this poem because Chankara is now going to read her Friday, Open Mic Friday poem. Bruised Love. A midnight thirst sent me padding to the kitchen for a jelly jar of water and an accidental run-in with my sister. She tiptoed in late and limping, her cheek as raw as red meat. I caught a quick glance in the chilly glow of the refrigerator before she had a chance to hide the latest souvenir her boyfriend gave her. I bruise easily is one of the lies she sprinkles like sugar, but I'm 15, not brainless. Besides, I knew the truth at 10. He'll never do it again, she swears, but he will, because she'll let him. Now me, I've got no excuses. No use for lame excuses or imitation love that packs a punch. God, that's powerful. Okay, so basic story that she tells is she goes down in the kitchen, sees her sister who has a bruise, and claims that it was because she bruises easily. And she doesn't believe it, and she says that she has no time for love that packs a punch. Nice story. Now let's admire some language. A midnight thirst sent me to the kitchen. So instead of saying she got thirsty in the middle of the night, which is how you would normally say it, she says, a midnight thirst sent me to the kitchen. So we have why she went to the kitchen. And we know she walked softly because she is padding into the kitchen. Sort of sounds weird when I say it like that, but as you read it, you just totally get the impression that she padded down into the kitchen. And then she has an accidental run-in with her sister. Notice her sister tiptoed in late and limping. Okay, so late and limping. What's that called when we have two consonant sounds that repeat? What's that an example of? If you said alliteration, awesome, that is right. Late and limping, both the same first letter, alliteration. And then we have raw as red brown meat. This is actually two different things. This is two things. What do you got? What's this an example of? So this is a simile because it uses like or as. And we also have raw red brown meat. Okay. So we also have some alliteration here. Okay. And then we have the feeling of the chilly glow of the refrigerator. I would say this is some good imagery. It helps me. Imagery is anytime the author uses words that help you to use your five senses to feel like you're there. And that chilly glow of the refrigerator, I can feel that cold light when she says that. Okay, so now answer. What is alliteration again? Fabulous. And then she's hiding the latest souvenir. But she didn't really get a souvenir from her boyfriend. What did she get from her boyfriend? If you said bruise, you're right. And so the bruise is not a souvenir, but she's comparing it to a souvenir, which makes it what? What's it called when you compare one thing to another? And this is without using like or as. Okay. And then we have some more great figurative language. She sprinkles like sugar. There's lies she sprinkles like sugar. That S sound just gives me a sense of sweetness. So we're repeating that S sound. What's that called? Okay, I hope you answered alliteration. And then she's sprinkling lies like sugar. Are lies like sugar? No. So that's a comparison. And we use the word like. So what kind of comparison is that? Excellent. If you said simile, you're exactly right. Okay. And to wrap it all off, I'm going to go ahead and skip because we know she knows the truth at 10. We got more alliteration here, truth at 10, right? He'll never do it again. We got rhyme. Okay. Awesome, awesome poem. And now me. I've got no use for lame excuses or imitation love that packs a punch. She's never going to let that happen to her. Okay. I hope you enjoyed this chapter, and I can't wait to read with you again tomorrow.